The first sign of disaster came as a vibration through the deck plates of the Serenity's Hope. Captain Nira's delicate rabbit-like ears twitched at the unusual frequency, her violet eyes widening as emergency lights began their crimson dance. Across the bridge, the Qatari colony ship, home to 3,000 peaceful souls, shuddered like a wounded animal in the vast emptiness of space. "Engine containment field is fluctuating," reported Engineer Wex, his normally steady voice betraying the first hints of panic. His six-fingered hands danced across holographic displays that showed increasingly dire readings. "Magnetic bottles are destabilizing. I cannot maintain containment much longer." Nira rose from her command chair, her slight frame barely 5 feet tall even at full height. The Qatari had evolved on gentle worlds, their bodies adapted for harmony, rather than conflict, their minds shaped by millennia of peaceful cooperation. They were gardeners, philosophers, and artists, not warriors or survivors. As she watched the data streams, she realized they were about to face their greatest test. "Time until complete failure?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. 6 hours, maybe 7 if we vent the auxiliary systems, Wex replied, his large, dark eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "But Captain, if we lose the engines, we lose everything. Life support, artificial gravity, communications, everything runs through the main power grid." The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly urgent warning chimes. 3,000 Qatari civilians, families, children, elders, all depending on decisions made in the next few minutes. Nira's mind raced through possibilities, each more hopeless than the last. Their convoy had been separated by a spatial anomaly 3 days prior. The nearest Qatari vessel was weeks away, and their destination colony was still months distant. "Send a priority distress beacon to the Galactic Council," Nira ordered. "Full emergency protocols. Request immediate assistance." Navigator Kem worked frantically at his station, his whiskers twitching with concentration. "Beacon away, Captain." "But—" He paused, consulting his calculations. "The nearest Council rescue ship is 4 days out, even if they receive our signal immediately and respond at maximum velocity. 4 days. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Around the bridge, her crew exchanged glances filled with the weight of inevitable loss. The Qatari had explored space for centuries, but always safely, always with backup plans and safety margins. This was different. This was the universe showing its true, merciless face. "Captain?" Communications Officer Vera spoke hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something else we could try." Nira turned to her communications specialist, noting the unusual tension in the younger Qatari's posture. "What do you mean?" "The emergency protocols include frequencies designated for—" Vera swallowed hard, her ears drooping with apparent shame. "For Deathworlder vessels. It's technically against Council regulations to contact them directly, but in extreme emergencies." A chill ran through the bridge crew. Deathworlders, the species from high-gravity, high-radiation, violent worlds. The ones the Council had deemed too dangerous for normal diplomatic contact. Rumors spoke of beings who thrived in conditions that would kill civilized species within minutes. Creatures who had evolved not from peaceful herbivores but from predators and omnivores. The stuff of nightmares for species like the Qatari. "No," Engineer Wex said immediately. "Captain, we cannot. They're monsters. The Council banned them from most sectors for good reason." But Nira found herself thinking of the children in the civilian sections, of the families who had trusted her to bring them safely to their new home. The weight of 3,000 lives pressed down upon her shoulders like a physical force. "Vera," she said quietly, "how close would such a vessel need to be to reach us in time?" The communications officer's fingers trembled as she worked her calculations. "Within 12 light hours, Captain. The fastest Deathworlder ships could reach us in that time frame." Nira closed her eyes, feeling the ship shudder again as another system failed. When she opened them, her decision was made. "Send the beacon. On all emergency frequencies," she commanded. "All of them." The bridge crew stared at her in shock, but her expression brooked no argument. As Vera's hands moved to comply, Nira whispered a prayer to the ancient Qatari spirits, asking not for salvation, but for forgiveness for what she might have just unleashed upon her people. In the depths of space, 2 signals raced outward through the void, one toward salvation that would arrive too late, and another toward something far more uncertain. 12 hours out from the Rigel sector, the human survey ship Relentless cut through space with the purposeful grace of a predator. Unlike the elegant curves of council vessels, the Relentless was all angles and armor plating, built to survive rather than impress. Her hull bore the scars of a dozen encounters with spatial phenomena that would have destroyed more fragile ships. Captain Beck stood in the ship's command center, a compact woman, whose weathered features spoke of years spent in the hostile environment of deep space. Her gray eyes studied the star charts, while her crew went about their duties with the casual efficiency of professionals who had faced danger together countless times. "Captain," Communications Specialist Ryan called from his station, his voice carrying an unusual note of urgency. "I'm picking up a distress beacon. It's from a Qatari colony ship." Beck turned, her eyebrows rising. The Qatari were among the most isolationist species in the galaxy, rarely venturing far from their protected core worlds. "Qatari? What are they doing out here?" "According to the beacon data, they're a colony ship bound for the Andromeda Relay. 3,000 souls aboard, and they're reporting complete engine failure." Ryan paused, consulting his readouts. "Captain, they're broadcasting on Deathworlder emergency frequencies. That's against about 6 different council regulations." The command center fell quiet except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Beck's crew, Chief Engineer Maya, Pilot Tom, and Security Chief John, all turned to look at their captain. They knew what this meant. Humanity had been blacklisted from most council space after what the bureaucrats called unfortunate incidents involving human rescue operations that had turned violent when pirates or slavers had appeared. How long until their life support fails? Beck asked. Maya, a tall woman with grease-stained coveralls and calloused hands, checked her calculations. Based on their ship specifications, maybe 5 hours, 6 if they're lucky, and start shutting down non-essential systems. And how long to reach them? 12 hours at maximum burn, Tom replied immediately. The pilot was younger than the others, but his reflexes were among the best Beck had ever seen. "We'd have to push the engines beyond recommended parameters." Beck walked to the main display, where the distress signal's origin point glowed like a distant star. Behind that dot were 3,000 beings facing death in the cold of space. The rational part of her mind recited the regulations, the political consequences, the fact that council vessels were probably already en route. But the larger part, the part that had driven her to join the Deep Space Survey Corps, couldn't ignore a call for help. "Maya, can the engines handle a 12-hour maximum burn?" The engineer's scarred face split into a grin. "Captain, these engines were built by humans for humans. They can handle whatever we throw at them. Question is, are we really doing this? The Council made it pretty clear what would happen if we interfered in their affairs again. They also made it clear they don't want us responding to emergencies in their space," Security Chief John added. The big man's voice carried the weight of experience. He'd been present during the incident that had led to humanity's current diplomatic status. "Last time we tried to help, they accused us of excessive force and culturally inappropriate responses to piracy." Beck nodded grimly. The incident at Tau Ceti was still fresh in everyone's memory. A human merchant vessel had responded to a distress call from a council transport under attack by raiders. The humans had successfully driven off the attackers, but their methods, which included ramming maneuvers and hand-to-hand combat in zero gravity, had horrified the more peaceful species. The fact that no innocents had been harmed and the raiders had been captured alive rather than killed was apparently less important than the barbaric display of violence. "Captain," Tom said quietly, "those are 3,000 people out there. I don't care what species they are." Maya nodded in agreement. "The Relentless was built for this. Deep space rescue and survey. It's what we do." Beck looked around at her crew. Her family, really, after years of facing the unknown together. She saw determination in their faces, the same stubborn refusal to abandon others that had gotten humanity in trouble with the Council in the first place. "John, what's our current cargo manifest?" "Standard survey supplies, emergency medical equipment, spare parts, and..." John paused, consulting his tablet. "About 24 fabrication units for emergency ship repairs." "Maya, start prepping the fabrication units. If their engines are as bad as they're reporting, We'll need to do more than patch hull breaches. Beck moved to her command chair, settling into its familiar embrace. Tom, plot our course and prepare. For maximum burn, Ryan, send a response to that beacon. Tell them help is coming. What should I tell them about our ETA? Ryan asked. Beck smiled grimly. Tell them 12 hours. And Ryan, make sure they know we're human. I want them to have fair warning about what kind of help they're getting. As the Relentless altered course and began its desperate race against time, Beck couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to enter a situation far more complex than a simple rescue mission. In her experience, when humans got involved in galactic affairs, things had a tendency to become very interesting very quickly. The engines roared to life at maximum output, and the ship leaped forward into the void. The Serenity's hope was dying. As the Relentless dropped out of hyperspace 12 hours later, the Qatari colony ship presented a heartbreaking sight against the star field. Her elegant hull, once a masterpiece of flowing lines and artistic curves, was now twisted and blackened. Atmosphere vented from dozens of microfractures, creating ghostly streams of frozen gas that caught the light of distant stars. Holy hell, Tom breathed from the pilot station. How are they still alive? Captain Beck studied the tactical display with growing respect for the Qatari crew. Someone aboard that ship had made a series of brilliant decisions to keep their people breathing this long. Emergency power was being routed through secondary systems, and they'd managed to create a stable pocket of atmosphere around the civilian sections by sealing off the damaged areas. Captain, Ryan reported, I'm receiving a transmission from the Qatari ship. Audio only. Their visual systems are down. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly alien, higher pitched than human normal, with an odd musical quality, but the relief in it was unmistakably universal. Human vessel Relentless, this is Captain Nira of the Serenity's Hope. We cannot express our gratitude that you responded to our call. Captain Nira, this is Captain Beck. We're here to help. What's your status? Life support is failing, sector by sector. We've managed to evacuate everyone to the central habitat ring, but the containment barriers won't hold much longer. Our engineering teams estimate perhaps 2 hours before complete atmospheric loss. Beck felt her jaw tighten. 2 hours to save 3,000 people from a ship that was essentially a sophisticated coffin drifting through space. Understood. We're scanning your hull now. Maya, what are we looking at? Chief Engineer Maya's hands flew over her console, her enhanced sensor suite painting a detailed picture of the Qatari ship's condition. Captain, their main reactor is offline, but that's actually good news. Prevents an explosion. The bad news is that their hull integrity is compromised in 17 locations. Their life support is running on backup power, and their engine section is completely unsalvageable. Can we dock? Negative. Their docking rings are twisted beyond use. We'll have to do this the hard way. Beck nodded, having expected as much. John, prep the emergency EVA suits. Maya, I want you to take a team over and assess what we can do about their life support. Tom, bring us in close. I want us near enough to provide cover if anyone else shows up. Captain. Nira's voice came through the comm again, and this time, Beck could hear the fear beneath the gratitude. I must warn you, we are not familiar with Deathworlder species. Our people are frightened. Some of our crew have never seen a human before. Beck almost smiled. Captain Nira, I understand. We'll do our best not to be too terrifying. Just remember, we're here to help. What happened next would have impressed even seasoned human space veterans. Maya suited up in full EVA gear designed to withstand the harsh environment of space, then launched herself across the 100-meter gap between ships using nothing but a maneuvering pack. Behind her came 2 other engineers, carrying emergency equipment that would have been impossibly heavy in gravity, but moved like feathers in the void. The Qatari crew watching through their few remaining viewports had never seen anything like it, where their own people would have required elaborate safety lines, backup systems, and careful coordination with ground control. The humans simply aimed themselves at the damaged ship and flew across empty space as if it were the most natural thing in the galaxy. Maya reached the Serenity's Hope and immediately began her assessment, her movements efficient and purposeful despite the bulky EVA suit. Through her helmet comm, her voice came back to the Relentless. Captain, I'm reading massive structural damage, but nothing we can't work with. The main problem is their power distribution system. It's completely fried. Can you fix it? Not with their technology, but I brought some human modifications. There was a grin in Maya's voice that Beck knew well. Give me 3 hours and some cooperation from their engineering team, and I can have them running on hybrid systems. But as Maya worked to establish temporary life support connections, alarms began sounding aboard the Relentless. Tom's voice cut through the chatter. Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration suggests raiders. Beck felt her blood turn cold. Pirates were drawn to distress beacons like scavengers to carrion, and a disabled colony ship represented a fortune in slaves and salvage. How many? 4 ships, medium configuration. They're moving to surround us. Through the comm system, Captain, Nira's voice carried new terror. The raiders. They've been hunting colony ships in this sector for months. Captain Beck, you must save yourselves. Do not sacrifice your crew for us. Beck looked around her bridge at her crew's faces. She saw Tom's jaw set with determination. Ryan checking the status of their communications array. John preparing defensive systems. Maya's voice came through the EVA comm. Captain, whatever you're planning, I need at least 2 more hours to get their life support stable. Captain Nira, Beck said calmly, I want you to understand something about humans. We don't abandon people in need, and we especially don't abandon them to pirates. My crew is going to continue working on your ship, and we're going to deal with your raider problem. But there are 4 of them, and only 1 of you. Beck's smile was cold and predatory. Captain, you sent a distress call to Deathworlders. You're about to see why the Council considers us dangerous. The first Qatari to see a human up close was young engineer Kess, barely out of training and working desperately to keep the Serenity's Hope's failing systems online. When the airlock cycled and Maya stepped through, removing her helmet to reveal distinctly predatory features, forward-facing eyes, prominent canine teeth, and a confident bearing that spoke of apex predator heritage, Kess nearly fainted. Easy. There, kid, Maya said, her voice surprisingly gentle despite her intimidating appearance. I'm here to help. You must be their engineering team. Kess managed a terrified nod, his large herbivore eyes darting between Maya and the emergency equipment she was hauling through the airlock. Behind him, several other Qatari engineers huddled together, their rabbit-like features expressing pure fear, mixed with desperate hope. Look, I know we're scary, Maya continued, setting down her equipment with careful precision. But right now, I'm the best chance you have of keeping your people breathing. So we can either waste time being afraid, or we can work together and save some lives. What's it going to be? The question hung in the recycled air for a moment before Kess stepped forward, his natural engineer's curiosity overcoming his species' evolved caution. What do you need us to do? Maya's scarred face split into a grin that probably didn't help her intimidation factor. I need to understand your power distribution system. These portable fusion cells I brought will keep your life support running, but I need to integrate them with your existing networks. For the next hour, Kess watched in amazement as Maya worked. The human engineer moved through the damaged sections of the ship with casual disregard for safety protocols that would have terrified any Qatari. When a section filled with radiation from their damaged reactor core, Maya simply put her helmet back on and continued working. When toxic fumes leaked from a ruptured chemical line, she held her breath for several minutes while making repairs that should have required a full hazmat team. How are you doing that? Kess finally asked, as Maya sealed a breach that was venting atmosphere directly into space, working in conditions that would have killed him in seconds. Doing what? Maya replied, not looking up from her work. Working in hard vacuum. The radiation levels in here would be lethal to any Qatari within minutes. Maya paused in her welding to look at the young alien engineer. Kid, humans evolved on a world where the background radiation could cook most species. Our sun throws out more hard radiation in a day than most civilized worlds see in a year. This? She gestured at the damaged section around them. This is just Tuesday for us. As if to prove her point, Maya reached into a section of machinery that was sparking with electrical discharge, her bare hands making adjustments while electricity arced around her. Kess watched in fascination and horror as she worked, completely unaffected by energy levels that would have stopped a Qatari heart. Your species, Kess said quietly. You really are from a death world, aren't you? Maya's expression softened slightly. Yeah, kid. Earth isn't like the gentle worlds the council species come from. Everything there is trying to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, sometimes even the ground under your feet. But that's not what makes us dangerous. What does? Before Maya could answer, Captain Beck's voice crackled through the comm system. Maya, how's our progress? Because those raiders are getting impatient out here. Life support is stable for now, Captain. Give me another hour and I can get their engines back online. At least enough for maneuvering. You might not have an hour. They're moving to attack. Formation. Kes felt his blood turn cold, but Maya just nodded calmly. Understood, Captain. Kes, I need you to show me the fastest route to your engine room. We're going to do this the hard way. The hard way, as it turned out, involved Maya crawling through sections of the ship that were filled with superheated steam, toxic gases, and radiation levels that made Kes's detectors scream warnings. She moved through it all with the same casual efficiency she'd shown before, pausing only to hand Kes a human-made breathing apparatus when the air became too poisonous for Qatari lungs. In the engine room, Maya surveyed the damage with professional assessment. Your magnetic containment bottles are completely shot, and your power coupling is fried. In a normal repair situation, this would take weeks. But? Kes asked, hearing something in her tone. But we're not in a normal situation, Maya began, unpacking equipment that looked far more robust than anything the Qatari used. Human engineering operates on different principles than council tech. Where you build for efficiency and elegance, we build for survival. These fusion cells aren't pretty, but they'll run for years without maintenance. As Maya began the complex process of integrating human power systems with Qatari technology, Kes found himself asking the question that had been bothering him since she'd arrived. Why are you doing this? Your people could have just ignored our distress call. The council has banned humans from most sectors. Maya paused in her work, her expression thoughtful. You want to know what makes humans dangerous, kid? It's not that we evolved on a death world. Lots of species did that. It's not that we're stronger or tougher, though we are. It's that we're too stupid to know when to give up. She returned to her work, but continued speaking. Any sane species would have looked at your situation and calculated the odds. 3,000 people on a dying ship, raiders closing in, rescue ships days away. The logical response is to cut your losses and run. But humans? She laughed, a sound that was both terrifying and oddly comforting. We look at impossible odds and think, challenge accepted. The lights flickered as Maya's fusion cells came online, and suddenly the Serenity's hope had power flowing through her systems again. Through the bulkheads, Kes could hear the life support systems roaring back to life, bringing fresh air and warmth to areas that had been slowly dying. There, Maya said with satisfaction. You're not going anywhere fast, but you won't be drifting helplessly either. That's when the ship shook, as weapons fire from the raiders began. The first pirate salvo lit up space around the two ships like deadly fireworks. Captain Beck watched the tactical display as 4 raider vessels moved into attack formation, their weapons charging for what they clearly expected to be an easy fight. On any other day, against any other species, they would have been right. John. Status on our defensive systems? Beck called out. Shields at full power, point defense systems online, and Security Chief John's scarred face showed a predatory smile. I've loaded the special ammunition you authorized for situations like this. Tom, evasive maneuvers. Keep us between the raiders and the Qatari ship. I don't want any stray shots hitting. Civilians. The Relentless began a complex dance through space, her movements sharp and aggressive compared to the flowing patterns preferred by council vessels. Where most ships would have tried to maintain distance and fight with long-range weapons, Beck brought her ship in close, using the raiders' own formation against them. Aboard the Serenity's Hope, Captain Nero watched the battle unfold with a mixture of terror and amazement. Her people had never seen combat like this. Council naval encounters were typically formal affairs, with ships maintaining proper distances and exchanging fire according to established protocols. This was something entirely different. The human ship moved like a living predator, rolling and diving through 3-dimensional space with maneuvers that should have torn apart any crew not adapted to high-gravity conditions. When the raiders tried to surround them, the Relentless suddenly accelerated directly toward the nearest enemy vessel, her forward guns blazing. "Kess," Maya's voice came through the internal comm system. "I need you to reroute power to your forward shields. Your human friends are about to try something insane." On the bridge of the Relentless, Beck was indeed about to try something insane. "Tom, I want a ramming course on the lead raider. Make it look convincing." "Ramming course?" Tom's grin was visible in his voice. "Captain, you do realize that's a capital offense under Council naval law?" "Good thing we're not Council," Beck replied. "John, prepare for close engagement. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come." The Relentless accelerated directly toward the lead raider ship, her guns firing continuously. The pirates, expecting the humans to break off at the last moment, held their course and returned fire. When it became clear that the humans weren't going to turn away, panic spread through the raider formation. At the last possible second, Tom threw the ship into a spinning dive that brought them alongside the enemy vessel rather than into it. The Relentless raked the raider's hull with point-blank weapons fire, her armored bulk absorbing return fire that would have crippled a more fragile ship. "Now that," John said with satisfaction, as the raider ship began venting atmosphere, "is how you handle pirates." But the fight was far from over. The remaining 3 raiders had learned from their companion's mistake, and were now coordinating their attack, trying to use their numbers to overwhelm the single human vessel. Weapons fire crisscrossed the space around the disabled Qatari ship, and it was only Tom's incredible piloting skills that kept the Relentless from being bracketed by enemy fire. "Captain," Ryan called out, "I'm detecting more ships dropping out of hyperspace. Long-range sensors suggest at least 6 more vessels, same configuration as the first group." Beck felt her jaw tighten. 10 raiders against 1 human ship were odds that even she had to respect. But as she looked around her bridge, she saw the same determination in her crew's faces that had gotten them through impossible situations before. "Maya," she called over the comm, "how's that engine repair coming along?" "5 more minutes, Captain. Maybe 10 if you keep shaking us around like this." "You don't have 10 minutes, Beck replied grimly. "Tom, new plan. We're going to give Maya the time she needs." What followed was a masterclass in human tactical thinking. Instead of trying to fight all the raiders at once, Beck used the Relentless to herd them away from the Qatari ship, drawing them into a running battle through a nearby asteroid field. The human ship's superior maneuverability and her crew's willingness to take risks that would horrify any sane species allowed them to turn the asteroids into weapons, using their engines to nudge chunks of rock into the paths of pursuing raiders. Aboard the Serenity's Hope, the Qatari crew watched in amazement as their rescuers fought a battle that seemed to violate every principle of civilized warfare. The humans weren't just defending them. They were actively hunting the raiders, turning what should have been a defensive action into an aggressive pursuit. "Captain Nira," Kess reported from the engine room, "the human engineer has restored 40% of our engine power. We can maneuver, but we can't run." "Then we won't run," Nira replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "If the humans are willing to fight for us, the least we can do is help however we can." It was then that Maya's voice came through the comm system with a suggestion that would have been unthinkable coming from any other species. "Captain Beck, what would you say to letting the Qatari help with the fighting? I've got some ideas about turning their ship into a weapons platform." The silence that followed was broken by Captain Nira's determined response. "Engineer Maya, tell us what you need." The transformation of the Serenity's Hope from a peaceful colony ship into an improvised weapons platform would have been impossible for any species except humans, and only humans would have been insane enough to try it. Maya's plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. "Kess, I need you to reroute power from your hydroponic systems to the forward deflector array," Maya explained as she worked frantically in the Qatari ship's engineering section. "Your people designed this ship to push aside cosmic debris during travel. With some modifications, we can turn that system into a weapon." The young Qatari engineer stared at her in horror. "You want to weaponize our navigation system? Kid, humans have been turning peaceful tools into weapons since we figured out how to throw rocks. Trust me on this." While Maya worked her mechanical magic, the battle in space had evolved into something resembling controlled chaos. The Relentless danced between asteroid chunks and raider ships, her crew performing maneuvers that violated both physics and common sense. Captain Beck had managed to destroy one more raider and disable another, but 6 functional pirate vessels still remained, and her ship was beginning to show the strain. "Hull breach on Deck 3, John reported calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Sealing now. Also, we're down to 60% on the port shields. Tom, swing us around for another pass. I want to keep their attention focused on us while Maya finishes her project." On the bridge of the Serenity's Hope, Captain Nira found herself in the unprecedented position of preparing her peaceful vessel for combat. Her crew, trained in diplomacy and colony administration, were rapidly learning the harsh realities of warfare from their human allies. "Captain," Communications Officer Vera reported, "Engineer Maya says she's ready to test the modified deflector system. She wants us to target the nearest raider." Nira's hands trembled slightly as she gave the order that would have been unthinkable just hours before. "All non-essential personnel to emergency stations. Prepare to fire." The modified deflector array that Maya had cobbled together from Qatari technology and human ingenuity was a thing of beauty and terror. Instead of gently pushing aside space debris, it now focused a concentrated beam of energy capable of punching through ship hulls. When it fired for the first time, the beam struck a raider vessel amidships and carved through its armor like a hot knife through soft cheese. "Holy stars," Vera whispered, as the pirate ship broke apart in a shower of sparks and venting atmosphere. "We actually did it!" But the victory was short-lived. The remaining raiders had learned from their losses and were now coordinating their attacks more effectively. Worse, the new arrivals had reached the battle zone and were moving to surround both human and Qatari vessels. "Captain Beck," Nira called over the communication link, "there are too many of them. Even with our new weapon, we cannot fight them all." Beck's response was characteristically human. "Captain Nira, you're thinking like a civilized species. The key to fighting superior numbers isn't to engage them all at once. It's to make them fight on your terms." What followed was a tactical demonstration that military historians would later call the Deathworlder doctrine. Instead of trying to protect the disabled Qatari ship by staying close to it, Beck ordered both vessels to advance directly toward the raider formation. The pirates, expecting their targets to run or hide, were caught completely off guard by the aggressive maneuver. The Relentless led the charge, her guns blazing as she carved through the raider formation like a predator, through a herd of prey animals. Behind her, the Serenity's Hope followed, her improvised weapon system targeting any pirate vessel that tried to flank the human ship. The sight of a colony ship, a vessel designed for peaceful exploration, actively hunting enemy vessels, sent shockwaves through the raider fleet. "Tom, bring us about for another pass," Beck ordered as they completed their first attack run. "John, status on the raiders?" "2 more disabled, 1 destroyed. But Captain, they're regrouping. They've figured out that we can't keep this up forever." He was right. The Relentless was a tough ship, but she was taking damage from multiple directions. Her armor was scarred by weapons fire, her shields were fluctuating, and her crew was pushing both themselves and their equipment beyond safe limits. The Qatari ship, despite Maya's modifications, was still a civilian vessel with civilian-grade systems. "Captain," Ryan called out from the communications station, "I'm detecting another ship dropping out of hyperspace. Large configuration, but—" He paused, consulting his readings. "Captain, it's broadcasting Council identification codes." Beck felt her heart sink. A Council naval vessel arriving now would complicate everything. They'd order both sides to stand down, then spend weeks conducting an investigation while the pirates escaped through legal loopholes. But Tom's voice cut through her concerns with barely contained excitement. "Captain, that's not a Council ship. It's another human vessel, heavy cruiser configuration, and she's broadcasting Terran Defense Force codes." The newcomer was the TDF Valiant, a massive human warship that made the Relentless look like a scout vessel by comparison. Her arrival changed the entire dynamic of the battle in seconds. Where there had been desperate odds against overwhelming numbers, there was now a predator entering a feeding frenzy. "Unknown human vessels, this is Captain Stone of the TDF Valiant," came the new voice over the communications channel. "We detected weapons fire and responded to investigate. Do you require assistance?" Beck almost laughed at the understatement. "Captain Stone, this is Captain Beck of the survey ship Relentless. We have a Qatari colony ship under attack by raiders. We could use some help evening the odds." "Understood." Valiant moving to engage. What happened next was less a battle than a demonstration of why humanity had earned its fearsome reputation among the stars. The Valiant didn't just join the fight, she dominated it. Her weapons systems, designed for ship-to-ship combat against peer adversaries, made short work of the remaining raiders. Within minutes, the pirate fleet was either destroyed or fleeing into hyperspace. Aboard the Serenity's Hope, the Qatari crew watched in stunned silence as their rescuers casually discussed the battle, as if it had been a routine training exercise. "Nice shooting, Maya," Beck's voice came through the comm system. "That improvised weapon system of yours took out 3 raiders. Thanks, Captain. Though I have to say, working with Qatari technology is like trying to perform surgery with silk gloves. Everything's so delicate and refined." Kess, who had been monitoring the conversation, felt compelled to respond. "Engineer Maya, our technology is designed for precision and efficiency. We don't typically need to destroy things." "No offense, kid," Maya replied with a chuckle. "But that's exactly why you needed Deathworlders to save you. Sometimes the universe requires a more direct approach." Captain Stone's voice joined the conversation. "All vessels, this is the Valiant. We're detecting debris fields and possible survivors from the raider vessels. Recommend we conduct search and rescue operations." "Agreed," Beck responded. "Captain Nira, are your people able to assist with medical treatment for any survivors?" The question hung in the recycled air of the Qatari ship's bridge. These were the same raiders who had come to enslave or kill them, yet the humans were already talking about rescuing their enemies. Nira felt something shift in her understanding of these strange, violent, compassionate beings. "Of course," she heard herself saying. "We have medical facilities prepared." As the 3 ships began the process of searching for survivors and securing the area, Kess found himself working alongside Maya to repair the damage from their improvised battle. The human engineer moved with the same casual efficiency she'd shown throughout the crisis, as if turning a peaceful colony ship into a weapon and then back into a rescue vessel was just another day at the office. "Maya," Kess said finally, "why did you help us? Your people have nothing to gain from saving Qatari colonists." Maya paused in her work, her expression thoughtful. "Kid, you're asking the wrong question. The right question is, why wouldn't we help? You needed help, we could provide it, so we did. It's not complicated. But the Council has banned your people from most sectors. You could face serious consequences for this." "Maybe," Maya shrugged. "But those 3,000 people in your civilian sections are alive, and that's what matters. Everything else is just politics." Outside the ship, the Valiant and Relentless continued their rescue operations, pulling survivors from the wreckage of the raider fleet with the same determination they'd shown in battle. It was, Kess realized, the most human thing he'd witnessed yet. The same species that had just destroyed a pirate fleet was now risking their own safety to save the lives of their enemies. "Your people," he said to Maya. "You really are impossible to understand." 3 days later, the Serenity's Hope limped into the Andromeda relay station under her own power, escorted by both human vessels. The Qatari colony ship bore the scars of battle, improvised armor patches, human-designed weapon systems still mounted on her hull, and the distinctive angular modifications that marked Maya's engineering work. She was no longer the elegant vessel that had left Qatari space months ago, but she was alive, and so were all 3,000 souls aboard her. The docking bay at Andromeda Station had never seen anything quite like the arrival of this unlikely convoy. Council officials, alerted by long-range communications, waited nervously as the 3 ships approached. The sight of 2 human warships escorting a Qatari colony vessel had set off alarm bells throughout the bureaucratic hierarchy. Captain Nira stood on her bridge, watching as the station grew larger in their viewports. Beside her, Engineer Kess monitored the modified systems that Maya had installed, marveling at their crude effectiveness. The human-designed components stood out like aggressive scars against the refined Qatari technology, but they worked with a reliability that their original systems had never matched. "Captain," Communications Officer Vera reported, "the station is requesting immediate communication with all vessel commanders. They want a full report on the unusual circumstances of our arrival." Nira nodded, having expected this. "Put me through to both human captains first. I want to coordinate our responses." Captain Beck's voice came through the comm system with the same calm confidence that had sustained them through the crisis. Captain Nira, I hope you're ready for a lot of questions from Council bureaucrats. They tend to get nervous when humans are involved in galactic affairs. Captain Beck, there's something I need to tell you before we dock, Nira replied. My people and I have been discussing what happened out there. What you did for us, it goes against everything we thought we knew about Deathworlders. Captain Stone's deeper voice joined the conversation. Captain Nira, what exactly did you think you knew about us? The Council teachings say that Deathworlder species are violent, unpredictable, dangerous to civilized society. They warned us that contact with your kind would corrupt our peaceful ways. Nira paused, choosing her words carefully. But you didn't corrupt us. You saved us, and when you could have simply left after the rescue, you stayed to help rebuild what was damaged. Kess stepped forward, his voice carrying across the bridge comm. Captain Beck, Engineer Maya, we want you to know that we've learned something important. The Council was wrong about humans. You're not monsters from a death world. You're what we wish we could be. The silence that followed was broken by Maya's characteristic laugh. Kid, you don't want to be like us. We're stubborn, reckless, and too stupid to know when to quit. That's not exactly a recipe for civilization. But it is a recipe for survival, Nira said firmly. And more than that, it's a recipe for protecting others. My people have spent centuries pursuing peace and knowledge, but we never learned how to defend what we'd built. You did that for us. As the ships completed their docking procedures, Captain Beck made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. Captain Nira, when the Council investigators arrive, tell them the truth. All of it. Don't try to minimize what happened or make it sound more civilized than it was. But the regulations, Captain Stone interrupted, were written by people who never had to choose between saving lives and following rules. You made the right choice when you called for help on Deathworlder frequencies. Stand by that choice. The formal inquiry that followed was everything Captain Beck had expected and more. Council investigators, led by a pompous official named Administrator Krell, arrived within hours and immediately began questioning every aspect of the rescue operation. They were particularly disturbed by the modifications made to the Qatari ship and the excessive use of force against the raiders. Captain Beck, Administrator Krell said during one particularly intense session, your actions represent a clear violation of 17 different Council regulations regarding interference in member species affairs. The weaponization of a civilian vessel alone constitutes a capital offense. Beck sat calmly in the station's conference room, flanked by Captain Stone and faced by a panel of Council officials. Administrator, with respect, those regulations assume that member species have effective means of protecting themselves. The Qatari didn't. We provided that protection by turning a peaceful colony ship into an instrument of war. No, Captain, Nira said firmly, entering the room with several of her senior officers. By saving 3,000 lives that would otherwise have been lost to pirates. Administrator Krell, I formally request that humanity be granted emergency response status. In Council space, the room fell silent. Emergency response status would give human vessels the legal authority to intervene in crisis situations throughout Council territory. Exactly what the bureaucrats had been trying to prevent. Captain Nira, Krell said carefully. You may not fully understand the implications of what you're requesting. Deathworlder species operating freely in Council space could destabilize. Administrator, Kess interrupted, his young voice carrying surprising authority. With respect, we've seen what happens when civilized species face real danger. We die. The humans didn't destabilize anything. They stabilized a situation that was spinning toward disaster. Captain Stone leaned forward in his chair. Administrator, humanity has been patient with Council restrictions, but we won't stand by and watch people die because of bureaucratic prejudice. We responded to a legitimate distress call, we saved lives, and we followed all applicable laws regarding defense of civilian populations. We violated regulations that prioritize paperwork over people, Beck said bluntly. And we'd do it again. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Captain Nira and her crew had made their position clear. Humanity had earned their trust and their recommendation. Other Council species, hearing about the rescue, began to reconsider their own positions on human involvement in galactic affairs. 6 months later, the Serenity's Hope completed her journey to her destination colony, her hull still bearing the distinctive modifications that Maya had installed. The colony she established became known throughout Qatari space as New Haven, and it maintained closer ties with humanity than any other non-human settlement in the galaxy. Engineer Kess, now chief engineer of New Haven's orbital facilities, kept a picture on his desk of the moment when Maya had first stepped through their airlock, not because she had been frightening, but because she had represented something his people had never truly understood: the courage to act when action was needed, regardless of the personal cost. The Council eventually granted Humanity Limited emergency response authority, though it took years of negotiation and political maneuvering. But for the 3,000 Qatari who now called New Haven home, the decision had already been made in the depths of space, when they had prayed for rescue and received something far more valuable: proof that the universe, for all its dangers, still contained those willing to risk everything for strangers. As Captain Beck often said in the years that followed, "We didn't set out to change galactic politics. We just refused to let good people die when we could prevent it. Everything else was just a bonus." And in the end, that stubborn refusal to abandon others, that fundamentally human inability to calculate acceptable losses when lives were at stake, proved to be exactly what the galaxy needed, even if it took some time for everyone to realize it. The end.